Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. So if you haven't heard, Riot are changing how LP gains and losses are going to work in Ranked, and I think this is an awful idea, and I'll tell you why. But first of all, let me explain what they're actually doing. So they're going to be increasing LP gains and LP losses from an average of 15 to an average of 22, and that's going to be happening next patch. So on the surface this might sound okay, right? However, I'm going to explain to you why this is going to be fairly bad for the people who play a lot of League, right? So firstly, let's go into why this doesn't really make too much sense. So recently Riot came out and said that they're going to make it so that instead of having one split during the year, they're going to have two splits split up halfway through the year. So one half of the year is going to be split one, the other half of the year is going to be split two, and there's going to be a soft reset in between that. And they said the reason for this was most players reach their goal ranks by the middle of the year, leaving them with little to do. Some people continue to grind, but others drop out of ranked entirely and return to smurfing, and that goes against one of our core goals in ranked. So, if it's true that they want to stop people from smurfing, and the whole reason why they did this was so that people get to their rank, and then by the time they get to their peak rank, there's a new split starting, then if we increase LP gains, then they're just going to get to that rank quicker, and then they're just going to smurf again. It makes no logical sense to increase LP gains if this is the reason why they are making two rank splits. It's one decision completely invalidating the other decision. The other decision. Because at this point, people will get to their peak rank quicker if they're going to get to that peak rank, and then what they'll do is just go back to smurfing or whatever they do, because they don't want to lose that rank, right? And now they'll have even more incentive to smurf, because the losses will be even greater. Even though the gains are greater, the losses will be greater as well, which means there's a higher risk, which means they're going to be more likely to engage in smurfing instead of actually continuing to play on that account. But that's not even the biggest issue here, and the biggest issue is much more psychological than it is logical. So let's go through an example here. So let's say you're playing League, and then you gain 1 LP and you lose 1 LP. Every time you win, lose 1 LP, gain 1 LP loss. Will you continue to play ranked? Probably not. You probably won't continue to play, because the main reason people play ranked is because they want that sense of achievement from winning, and that sense of, or mainly just a sense of achievement from winning, and they want sort of the risk of losing as well. And this makes it almost addictive, because believe it or not, League winning and losing is mainly a luck-based thing, right? You can influence how you play, but there's 9 other players, right, who are playing the game, and they have as big of a possible influence as you have on the game, right? So on average, if we're just thinking about it like this, you're going to have maybe like 10% impact, give or take, depending on how we're judging it. You could say it increases, you can say it decreases, but let's say we'll average it out about 10% impact on the game. So that means 90% on average of the game is decided largely by factors which are somewhat out of your control, right? Especially when you're not smurfing and you're playing in the rank which you need to play at. So this means that League games are largely a gamble. You have influence, they're not completely random, but they are largely a gamble. And what does this mean then? So when LP gains increase, this means that it's much more likely for people to spiral up or to spiral down, and this is where it gets really, really bad, because a lot of people who play League and play a lot play ranked games a lot, and this means that if they go from, I don't know, plat 2 or something all the way down to like gold something, that's going to feel awful, that's going to feel terrible, right? Even though before this change was made, they maybe would have gone from, like, I don't know why I said plat 2 down to like low plat 1 or something like that, right? They're going to make a lot greater losses, and even if they make greater progress, that doesn't really matter if you think about it from a more, I guess you could say, psychological point of view, right? Because these people who are winning feels good for a much shorter period of time than losing feels bad, right? So generally, I think this will make League a much more negative experience for everyone. Because imagine you're in a game with someone and they just lost 4 games in a row. That's a demotion, near enough. Depending on, it's slightly less than a is it? Yeah, just slightly less than a demotion with these new rank changes. They're just gonna be annoyed. They're not gonna be wanting to win. Well, maybe they are, I don't know, but they're not gonna be happy. I can say this in a better way. Humans are loss averse, which means we get more emotional when it comes to losing than we get emotional when it comes to gaining stuff. I'll put a video here to explain this better than I can.
A simple way of looking at life is as a series of choices, where there's a probability that we may gain something and a probability that we may lose something. In economics, these choices are called prospects, and when people are presented with prospects, they display a behaviour called loss aversion. This means that people generally hate losing more than they enjoy winning. For example, Kahneman and Tversky did a study where they gave people a choice between an 80% chance of winning $4,000 or a 100% chance of winning $3,000. Mathematically, the first choice is better. The expected outcome is 80% times 4,000, which gives us $3,200. This is more than the expected outcome for the second option, which is $3,000. Almost everyone, however, chose the second option because they preferred the risk-free option of having a guaranteed $3,000.
So this means generally that League is going to become a much more toxic, in my opinion, place, because people are going to be a lot more upset because they're going to lose a lot more, right? Even if they win a lot more, winning is less conducive to happiness and losing is conducive to sadness or to anger or to toxicity. Not to mention that the change in and of itself is just illogical. So now I didn't even think about this before. So now it's going to be more toxic because of the changes which are made, and it's going to be more toxic because there's going to be Smurfs, right? Because people are going to get to their peak rank quicker. They're not going to play on those accounts anymore because there's a higher risk of them losing LP. So they're just going to go on Smurfs mode, which completely defeats the entire purpose of making 2 rank splits. So I don't know what they're doing. People think this is a good idea. I kind of understand why they think that, but if you look more into it, it's actually going to have, in my opinion, very negative consequences. And this is where I'll get onto my second point about League. So, in my opinion, Riot is extremely lucky with League of Legends. Generally, League is successful despite Riot's changes rather than because of Riot's changes, especially recent changes. If you want an example of this, just if you play League, what would have to happen for you to stop playing League? In theory, for most people, very, very little. I mean, what would they have to change in League to stop you from playing League? Generally, this is something which they're never going to do. Whatever you're thinking about is probably something which they're not going to do, right? Because you may say, oh, I'll stop playing if they do this, and then they do it, and then a lot of people continue to play. League have straight up removed champions from the game. Like Asol, the Asol rework. Asol now is a completely different champion than he was before. None of his abilities are even really too similar. Like his ult isn't similar, his E, his W. The only thing which is similar is his flight ability. I don't know if that's his E or his W. So that's somewhat similar, but even so, it's still very different how it interacts with his Q and all stuff like that. The champion is now near enough completely removed from the game. We could talk about how they removed different rework champions before that as well. But people still continue to play. Look at Mordekaiser, for example. Mordekaiser used to kill Drakes and then have them respawn and have them go attack people. Now he sends people to Brazil and stuff like that. So, I don't know. Right? And people, generally, they'll be upset about it, but they're never upset enough to quit the game, right? They're never so angry at the changes to make them quit the game, or if they do quit, they normally come back. And this is another thing. League is already addictive, and these LP gains and LP changes are just going to make League even more addictive. Not to mention that League are doing some kind of shady stuff behind the scenes, in my opinion. So some of the code got leaked for League, and some people got their hands on it, and then they're showing stuff like, oh, if you're on a win streak, you're less likely to get auto-filled and stuff like that, right? So all of this comes together to reinforce the idea which I've had for a long time. League cannot fail. It's very, very hard for League to fail. They're so lucky with the game which they have now, the game which they were lucky to create in the beginning, or the game which they spent a lot of hard work to create in the beginning, but now that hard work is still paying off, so now they have to work less hard. And because of this, how can they fail? How can they lose? Like they just always win. There's nothing that they can do to destroy their game. No matter how hard they might try, they can't destroy it. So these changes will probably go on. They're probably going to lead to more toxicity, and then what's probably going to happen is they're either going to do nothing or they'll just change it back, and then the same amount of people will keep playing, right? Because these people are paid in order to change the game. They're not paid in order to make the game better, right? That was never an idea. As long as the game is changing for better or for worse, it doesn't really matter. That's what they're paid for. So yeah, that's the video for today. I hope you lot enjoyed this more upsetting, more somber video. But yeah, I'm gonna make a Viego guide soon, and I'm gonna be making a few relooks on itemization in League as well. So see you a lot in the next one. Have a good one.